Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight, the pressure of success. Sounds of shame, and that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes. This day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Now, if I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given. Won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Well, hello everyone. I am sorry this is so late. I don't expect very many people to be joining live, but I had an interview earlier tonight with Fight for Liberty, and we were having such a good discussion that it lasts for 2.5 hours. So I had to do this a bit later, but you know, all for liberty, so that's great. But we're gonna get right into it. But if you are here, please do not hesitate to comment, because I would enjoy the company to keep me a little bit awake, right? Okay, what we're doing tonight is the supplement to January, February 1972. And we had went through most of it, but we're gonna just tie some things together. And the first thing we're gonna do is, I found this clip of Nixon that, hey, Jeremy Todd, yeah, boy, David and I had a great time. So I found this very interesting clip of Richard Nixon. You guys are going to get a kick out of this. So I'm going to play this clip in full, and we'll come right back.
Good evening. Now that most of the major witnesses in the Watergate phase of the Senate committee hearings on campaign practices have been heard, the time has come for me to speak out about the charges made and to provide a perspective on the issue for the American people. For over 4 months, Watergate has dominated the news media. During the past 3 months, the 3 major networks have devoted an average of over 22 hours of television time each week to this subject. The Senate committee has heard over 2 million words of testimony. This investigation began as an effort to discover the facts about the break-in and bugging of the Democratic National Headquarters and other campaign abuses. But as the weeks have gone by, it has become clear that both the hearings themselves and some of the commentaries on them have become increasingly absorbed in an effort to implicate the president personally in the illegal activities that took place. Because the abuses occurred during my administration and in the campaign for my re-election, I accept full responsibility for them. I regret that these events took place, and I do not question the right of a Senate committee to investigate charges made against the president to the extent that this is relevant to legislative duties. However, it is my constitutional responsibility to defend the integrity of this great office against false charges. I also believe that it is important to address the overriding question of what we as a nation can learn from this experience and what we should now do. I intend to discuss both of these subjects tonight.
Okay, so here we go. Yeah, so that was a short clip. But how do you know when a politician is lying? Their lips are moving. What a piece of trash. So I didn't know, and perhaps you didn't know, that Watergate was already going on during the time that he was running for, well, we knew the events were going on, obviously, because they broke into the Democratic National Headquarters. But what I didn't know is that this had already been discovered. Like it was already a current issue in the public eye, and he still won by a landslide. Even though this was in January, the news was already implicating him. And I just found it, didn't you find it weird? I don't know, maybe I just found it weird the way he kept referring to himself in the third person, and part of the thing, like, they're trying to implicate the president. Well, that's you, right? And then other times he said my, which is not third person. Yeah, the integrity of this great office. What a piece of crap. Defending against false charges. Man. Oof. Next expected him to say, I did not have sexual intercourse with that woman. But yeah, I thought that clip was just such a piece of work. But that's what was going on. And you learn something about how long Watergate was going on if you didn't know. It was news to me. And I see TJ was like, you're up late. Yeah, I'm up late. You can blame Fight for Liberty, David Fight, because I was on his show for 2.5 hours. I anticipated an hour, but we were really just having a great discussion. But what we're going to watch next is I pulled up this video and overview of the 72 election season. And I thought it was a nice synopsis, and it does mention the LP. And I would like to play it, and I'll be stopping it occasionally to make some comments. It's not a long video. It's under 5 minutes. And we will be talking about the contents as it goes. So let me shut up and start it.
Mr. Beat presents Presidential Elections in American History. The 47th presidential election in American history took place on November 7th, 1972. It was the first one in which Americans aged 18 to 20 could vote in, thanks to the recent passage of the 26th Amendment to the Constitution. Richard Nixon.
Okay, first thing. I did not realize that it was that recent, I guess if recent is even the right word, that 18-year-olds and up could vote, and that it was the 72 election that was the first time that could happen. I first learned this in doing the book discussion I'm doing with my patrons of Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail 72, and a big hullabaloo was made about the youth vote. This group, I think they said of 25 million voters that just all of a sudden are going to be able to vote, who weren't able to vote last election, not just because they reached of age, but because the age was lowered. And somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I'm like, beginning to doubt whether this was an urban legend or not, but I had thought at one point the age of majority in this country was 21 instead of 18. Am I right on that, or was it state by state? I don't know why I've always thought that. And if that's true, when was that? Because it seems to me, once the age of majority was 18, you should have gotten the right to vote. I mean, that's just crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. So I wanted to bring that up in case you didn't know it. So that was going on.
Acted like a madman. Well, he pretended to, making the Soviet Union and North Vietnam think he was unpredictable and crazy so that they would be more afraid of the United States. Really, though, Nixon just wanted the Vietnam War over. But he found it difficult to just bring all the troops home at once. In some ways, he made the conflict worse after he continued to secretly bomb Cambodia. Still, each year, more and more American troops came back home. Nixon seemed to contradict himself with foreign policy. On one hand,
He seemed to contradict himself with a lot of things, correct? The integrity of this great office.
and he wanted more involvement abroad to prevent the spread of communism, including having the CIA continue to secretly take out communist leaders in foreign countries. On the other hand, Nixon advocated a policy called détente, which is a fancy word for easing relations between two countries. Nixon visited communist China, for example, which was an important step in improving relations with them. Going into the election, Nixon had an approval rating of over 60%, but he did have two opponents trying to get renominated by the Republicans. Pete McCloskey, a representative from California, ran against him because he thought all the troops from Vietnam should have been brought home a long time ago. Nixon's other opponent was John Ashbrook, a representative from Ohio, who criticized Nixon for being too liberal and too much of a big government guy. Ashbrook
Okay, so, yeah, TJ pointed out that there were people under 21 in the military in Vietnam, yet they couldn't even vote for the people or against the people that sent them to die. No, I'm appalled. This is new information for me, and I am absolutely appalled. Those of you who have joined me for the Political Perspective column leading up to this, these two guys, these are two names well known to us. I wanted to stop that there. Just it's nice to put faces to the names, but they're going to talk about a few more here too.
Also against détente. But McCloskey and Ashbrook never had much of a chance. Nixon was easily renominated, with Spiro Agnew again as his running mate. I love saying his name. 15 people declared themselves as candidates for the Democratic Party. One of them, Shirley Chisholm, a representative from New York, became the first African American to run for a major party nomination. Another, Patsy...
Okay, we'll get to this next one. Now, here's what's interesting. I didn't realize Shirley Chisholm was the first African American to run for a major party nomination. That is very, very interesting. This is going to become important later, just in general, with the way he's highlighting these two women. He's going to go on to say Patsy Mink, who's on the screen, was the first Hawaiian American, but that is actually not correct. There was a Republican male Hawaiian candidate. I don't have the name right here. I apologize. I should have written it down. But Mr. Beat, the author of this YouTube video, was corrected multiple times in the comments that he had this wrong.
Mink, a representative from Hawaii, was the first Asian American candidate to run for president for a major party. The guy who was the favorite for the nomination originally was Senate Majority Whip Ted Kennedy, the youngest brother of John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy. But he said he wouldn't be a candidate. Hubert Humphrey went ahead and gave it another go, but did not campaign aggressively. It's almost like he didn't want to go through it all again. Edmund Muskie, Humphrey's running mate in 1968, was the front runner for a while until a successful smear campaign shook him up to a point where it looked like he was crying, and
There's no crying in baseball!
And we are dealing with this right now in Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail. It's neat the way all this is tying together. If those of you who are really enjoying going through this time period, of course, this is somewhat self-serving what I'm going to say, but I really do encourage you to become a patron because we just started this book and I think you will learn a lot You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. Patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. But let's continue here. We are going to get into this smear campaign, which is very interesting on my Patreon channel. And TJ said he was pretty sure that there was another African American on a major party ticket. I don't think so, because the commenters, Mr. Beat is a popular YouTube channel, and go check it out if you like this sort of thing that I'm playing. He got corrected on every error, and no one said that. And his audience seems pretty sharp, because he made another error, or more of an omission later, that people really jumped on him for too.
Even if they were just snowflakes. And this hurt his chances, believe it or not. Then there was George Wallace, who was back with the Democratic Party after leaving them in 1968 with his fairly successful third-party run. Wallace, surprisingly, did well in the primaries again, but his campaign was cut short after he was shot multiple times by a kid named Arthur Bremer, who, believe it or not, was released from prison back in 2007 for good behavior and is still alive. Wallace survived.
Okay, something his commenter said, and I agree with. Why believe it or not? He did the crime in 72 and was released in 2007. That's quite a long jail term. He didn't kill the man. He did, though, grievously wound him. But I don't see what's so surprising about him being released over 30 years later. Did he want the guy to spend life in prison? Perhaps, because that would be an act of political terrorism.
But he was paralyzed from the waist down and would be in tremendous pain for the rest of his life. So that just leaves George McGovern, a senator from South Dakota who had a big grassroots campaign. McGovern stood out as the leading anti-war candidate, who also thought all the troops from Vietnam should have been brought home a long time ago. Although
Okay, in the comments, people were just totally ripping on this dude's name. They're like, he's running for a government position and his name is McGovern. Home of the McDonald's, right? It's just McGovern. That's just funny. That's like Bodie McBoatface for the name of that boat.
the Democratic Party establishment again wanted Hubert Humphrey as their guy. The grassroots movement to get McGovern as the nominee overcame them. McGovern became the nominee, and what became known as the McGovern Commission, or the principle that the most primary votes should actually determine who the nominee was, has been the norm ever since. Some of the Democratic Party establishment didn't like McGovern, though, and refused.
Okay. He kind of glossed over that thing about the McGovern Commission, which the tradition then that the people who got the most primary votes. The Democratic National Convention in 1968, this is, again, in the book, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail 72. Apparently, some big drama went on, which scarred some of these candidates for life, that they were out for blood. It almost sounds like when Ron Paul was screwed out of the nomination, or when Bernie Sanders was. So, yeah, I want to look into it more. He kind of glossed it over here, but apparently the 1968 Democratic National Convention was a bona fide shit show.
To support him, the Democrats nominated Thomas Eagleton, a senator from Missouri, as his running mate. As it turns out, Eagleton had health concerns and was pressured to drop out of the race. After Eagleton dropped out, McGovern had a hard time finding his replacement. He asked,
Okay, I know I'm stopping a lot. I'm stopping a lot for several reasons. One, copyright issues, because I'm playing a whole video. I do need to do commentary. But also because I do have commentary. That thing with Eagleton, that was gone into as well in the book, but also in the comments. He says he had a health concern. That's whitewashing it quite a bit. He, I think, just simply, if I remember correctly, just suffered from periodic depression, but that was so taboo. And, you know, people did not, you know, it was shameful to have mental health issues at that time. And that's just really sad that he got driven out of the, you know, being the vice presidential running mate for that.
6 different people to be his running mate, and they all turned him down. That's a little embarrassing. Finally, Sergeant Shriver, a brother-in-law to the Kennedys and a former ambassador to France, became his running mate. The American Independent Party, which nominated George Wallace in 1968, this time nominated John Schmitz, an extremely conservative representative from California, for president, and Thomas Anderson, a writer and farmer originally from Tennessee, for vice president. But it appeared to be another classic two-way race between Nixon and McGovern. Just like Goldwater in 1964, this time McGovern was successfully portrayed as a radical. Opponents said his foreign policy and views on the Vietnam War were unrealistic and that he leaned too far to the left. He did, after all, call for a guaranteed minimum income for the poor. Heading into the...
Okay, so, yeah, McGovern probably would be seen as a centrist Democrat today, though interestingly, he was calling for a guaranteed minimum income. Not a universal, not UPI, but, you know, somewhere in that family. And because of things like this, it was really anticipated that this new youth vote would really come out for him.
Election, it just wasn't looking so good for McGovern. And here are the results. Richard Nixon easily won re-election, receiving 520 electoral votes. He got 60.7% of the popular vote. By all accounts.
Okay, stopping 1 second. In the comments, somebody signed up a troll account with McGovern's name and kept posting, "Damn, he really kicked my ass." It was just funny. But here is the beautiful Electoral College map. There is an error on it that the commenters pointed out in that DC is colored red. DC has never gone red. DC should be colored blue on this map. But allegedly, this map came from Wikipedia, at least at the time this video was out, so it was wrong there. But let's continue.
Nixon destroyed McGovern. McGovern received only 17 electoral votes, which was just Massachusetts. In the District of Columbia, he got just 37.5% of the popular vote. Nixon received nearly 18 million more votes than McGovern, the widest margin of any presidential election in American history. You may also notice something else weird about the electoral map. In Virginia, one faithless elector who said he'd vote for Nixon instead voted for the Libertarian Party candidate John Hospers. This was the first election in which the Libertarian Party participated. It was the last time someone other than a Republican or a Democrat won an electoral vote.
Okay, this obviously was done before 2016 and before 2020. In 2016, there were multiple candidates who were not members of the Democrat or Republican Party who received Electoral College votes. One of them, man, I had her name and now I forgot it, but it was the Native American lady, either in Washington or Alaska. And she had a very ethnic Native American name, Spotted Eagle something, I think. So this was made before 2016. But notice the omission here. He went out of his way to highlight Shirley Grisham being the first African American and a woman to be the first to have, I'm trying to say a major party, running in a major party, and also Ms. Mink. Why didn't he mention that Toni Nathan was the first woman to ever get an Electoral College vote and is also the first Jewish American too? And John Hospers, I mean, we do not know if there were any other people in the past who either won office, ran for office, got Electoral College votes that were gay, but he is the first one that was known, because people were closeted before. So I'm sure there were plenty of gay people before. People just didn't know. But they knew about that with John Hospers. We had so many historic firsts there. Why wasn't that mentioned? I don't get it. Why wasn't that mentioned? TJ says that he was wrong about Shirley Chisholm, so I'd be really interested in hearing that if you put it up on the screen. So I, though, was very disappointed, but I will say Mr. Beat's audience did take him to task for that. They also challenged him, though. Again, most of these comments were in before 2016, saying that there were other candidates before 2016, that there were faithless electors to get electoral college votes. But they didn't listen carefully to what he said. He didn't say that others who weren't officially running, he just said others who weren't members of the Republican or Democrat Party. There were other faithless electors, but they didn't nominate third-party candidates or independents or undeclared candidates. So his commenters were wrong there, and we're going to go over that. I have the data on faithless electors because I promised that to you guys. So let's finish this up, and we'll continue.
I'll see you for the next election, buddy.
Okay, I let that run because, again, I used his whole video and I wanted his advertisements to show. And now that I saw he has an episode on the 1968 election, I'm hoping he goes into that shit show of the convention. So I'm going to watch that. And I have subscribed to him because I find these little summaries neat. You know, and if you're into history, you might want to subscribe as well. So let's do the political perspective. And after that, I have the other things I promised you guys, which is information on faithless electors and also some of those articles that were ran in January after that surprise with John Hospers and Tony Nathan getting an electoral college vote. I told you I'd look it up, and I have. I forgot to print them out, so I'm going to be reading them on my screen. It's like this tiny lettering for me. But let's first do the political perspective here. All right. Number 9, blundering towards the millennium. Well, this is still kind of far away from the millennium, though, wasn't it? Or have things finally stopped getting worse? No, David Nolan. Things definitely did not stop getting worse. It is the fashion in libertarian circles to continuously bemoan the current state of affairs. I think that is a requirement of libertarians to continuously bemoan. I like the way he put that. Bemoan is a word that is not used nearly enough. Oh, I like the next one. Wailing almost incessantly. Man, he was good with words. That every day brings us closer to the capital F final, capital C collapse, or the capital D death of capital F freedom. And undeniably, things have been going downhill. There is no question that we have less freedom today than we did 10, 20, or 60 years ago. Depends upon who you ask, David. I think that some minorities would tend to disagree with you. But overall, on net, yes, people had less freedoms. Okay. So, but we must not let this generally justifiable lack of sanguinity. I love him using all these words that just aren't used nearly enough. Become an unshakable habit. Favorable developments do occur occasionally, and lately there have been more than is usually the case. So many, in fact, that we may perhaps hope that things have bottomed out, and that while they might not get better on balance in the foreseeable future, oh, my sweet summer child, at least they may have stopped getting worse. To be sure, the picture is by no means entirely rosy. The Nixon administration's accelerating crusade to manage the national media, for example, is certainly a development to be viewed with alarm. And the proposed federal budget for the upcoming fiscal year is, as usual, a new world's record. Nonetheless, a lot of relatively nice things have happened in the last few months, and in toto, they are cause for at least some minor rejoicing. People also do not use in toto very much. I see that words a lot because I work in law. For those of you who don't know, I'm a paralegal, and that's a Latin phrase that is used quite a bit. Also, such gems as sua sponte and ipsa dixit, which you may catch me using quite a bit. I love using ipsa dixit. Okay, but continuing. First, of course, is the fact that the ghastly, all these wonderful descriptive words, ghastly. Vietnam War now appears to really be headed for a conclusion, complete with a return of American prisoners and an end, at least temporarily, of the hideous selective slavery system. Indeed, it appears that America may now be entering a new era of military isolationism. I brought this up before. I know we prefer the term non-interventionism today, and I do think that is more accurate. The early party did not shy away from the term isolationism. Nixon as much as said so in his inaugural speech. And while RMN, Richard Nixon, is certainly not the most trustworthy of men, you think? That's the understatement of the year. One suspects that he correctly senses that the American people are fed to the gills with global adventurism. On the economic front, recent weeks have witnessed several advances. In a tacit admission that the wage price controls were a complete failure, our Fuhrer has effectively thrown in the towel. We're not out of the woods yet, but at least we're heading in the right direction. And in a surprisingly rational move to force prices down the only way they can be effectively forced down, i.e., through decontrolling the market and thus increasing competition, the administration is lifting a number of import quotas. Restrictions against American citizens owning gold may soon be lifted. Also, although there will be probably a whopping tax on transactions. Yeah, Ken Mullman, isn't that fantastic? not the most trustworthy of men. And again, I don't want to assume all you guys know what went on. Nixon made everyone turn in their gold. I mean, why am I surprised that people today just went along with what happened last year? They were Baba sheeps back then too, it seems. Okay, and another unexpectedly rational move, the rising cost of food is being combated the right way by getting rid of farm subsidies. There is serious talk of letting that great... I'm sorry, I read ahead. That great white elephant, Amtrak, die a natural death at the end of this fiscal year. And will wonders never cease? Richard Nixon actually said something positively libertarian in his inaugural address. Hard to believe though it may be. He really did say, ask not what your government can do for you. Ask rather what you can do for yourself. I hardly could have said it myself. Now, if only he means it. Every time I read these columns, I regret that I never got to meet David Nolan. Even in the area of civil liberties, all is not bleak. The Supreme Court's ruling on abortion is a real milestone. Whether or not one approves of abortions, one cannot help but be elated that our highest court actually went on record as saying that people should have dominion over their own bodies and that it is none of the government's damn business what they do to themselves, at least in certain cases. Nice going, Supremes. Now, how about applying the same logic to sex laws, drug laws, and idiotic proposals like compulsory installation of airbags in automobiles? Heck, fellas, even Bill Buckley has come out in favor of decriminalizing the possession of grass. Such a 70s word for pot. It would be tempting to believe that all of these promising developments or likely developments are the result of a conversion to libertarianism on the part of our rulers. Unfortunately, that almost certainly is not the explanation. They're almost certainly the same old pragmatists they always were, and are doing the right thing simply because they've tried everything else and nothing else has worked. Still, it is nice to say that although they may still be blundering about aimlessly, at least they're now blundering in the right direction. And although we certainly can't claim that they've started to act more libertarian because of the influence libertarians have had on mass opinion, our efforts have undoubtedly helped. Hosper's one electoral vote and semi-libertarian Smitz's million popular votes surely didn't go completely unnoticed. And the reluctant conversion of people like Bill Buckley to a less unlibertarian position than they formerly held is almost certainly due, at least in part, to the realization that the libertarian movement has been siphoning off some of their supporters. So, although the battle is far from over, it appears that we may now have reached a point where it is appropriate to quote Sir Winston Churchill's remark upon hearing of the first Allied victory in Africa. This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end. But it is perhaps the end of the beginning. And I love this little announcement on the bottom here. We are pleased to announce that for the first time ever, the current issue of LP News has a circulation greater than that of the current issue of Life. That is interesting, isn't it? All right. A couple of other things before we move on to the faithless elector things. Let me go backwards in LP News here, because there were things I told you guys I was going to try to chase down, and I wanted to at least, close those circles. I was trying to find some of the news coverage of the announcement that Hosper's received an electoral college vote. Couldn't find any of it. There is a channel that archives like nearly all of the broadcasts by Walter Cronkite, but you know who I'm saying. Forget my mispronunciations. This one wasn't there, and that is sad. So on the first page, I told you I was going to be trying to find that, and I could not, unfortunately. So let's see if there was anything on the second page that I said I was going to try to chase down. Oh, yeah, I have some things for you on this interesting proposal. Ken, if you're still here and you have not read page 2 of the January-February 1973 LP News, take a look at it. There is some interesting ballot access proposals here. There was a senator, Senator Birch Bayh, who continuously tried to pass a constitutional amendment to get rid of the Electoral College. Of course, every time, other than the two old parties get an Electoral College vote, they panic and want to get rid of the Electoral College. And David Nolan was pretty agnostic on that whole issue. And he said, however, why don't we try to get Birch Bayh on board with some other electoral reforms? And he laid out a bunch of really good ones that I think deserve to see the light of day again as things that we should perhaps champion as a party today. Of course, that constitutional amendment went nowhere, but I think, and I might distribute this to the LNC to take a look at. I just thought they were really clever, things I had not thought of before. Okay, let me see. I don't think there was anything on page 3 that I promised to chase down. And then the political perspective is next. Let's see if on the next page here. Okay, political perspective. Oh, no, we did, excuse me, the last page. The Liberty Amendment. We read out the text of the Liberty Amendment a while back, and I was trying to find it again, and I think that website's been taken down. So I don't have the exact text, but basically it was for the repeal of the income tax. And the LP had been behind that, obviously. I did not look for this. I need to still. The article of The Young Pay for the Old in New York Times Magazine. I will chase that down if I can find it. But down at the bottom here, there was a refutation by a physician on whether medical care is a right. I tried to find that paper. I did find the title of it, but I haven't found any place that's selling it. I did put it on multiple want lists, and if I can find it somewhere at a reasonable price, I'll purchase it and let you guys know. But I don't have it here. Also, I did not get a chance, if you on the second column under the title, A Little Help from Our Friends, to see if I have in my personal collection that issue of Against the Wall. I just wasn't able to do it. It's in this pile of things that I'm trying to organize, that I bought a bunch of things off of eBay, like bulk magazines, and I'm pretty sure I have that. If I do, again, I will bring it up to you guys. And let me see. I think that was all of the promises I made last episode, but let me just scan this last page. Yeah, that was all I had said I would try to find for you guys. So, what we'll go to now, and unfortunately I couldn't queue these up ahead of time because I had computer problems. You guys don't want to know all about that, so we'll just pull them up on the fly. So, let me go to a new scene here. So you're just going to have to bear with me a second. One sec. Right here. So we're going to go to a blank screen, and I am going to pull up some of these things that I had promised you guys. Okay. First thing will be this. And this... Who electors voted for? Okay, so this was Biden and Trump. Why did I pull this up before? I do not know why. Oh, there were no faithless electors, I think is what I wanted to show you guys this time. Yeah, there are no clear squares because somebody had said they thought there was one this election. So that's why I pulled that up, because that was something I had promised to run down. Okay, let me see what else I got here. I'm just going to start pulling up the things I said I would get. What is this? They're not in any kind of order because I wasn't able to organize them. Okay, here is some history up through 2016 of faithless electors. So, as you can see, there was quite a bit in 2016, but look back there at 1872, but look at the reason for it. The nominee died. So, they were pledged to a certain nominee, but the guy died. So they voted for somebody else. So I think we could kind of understand that. And this one here, this abnormal vote in 1988, it was a mistake. The elector screwed it up. He didn't mean to do that. And I think, no, excuse me, that was in 2004, accident. Abnormal vote, I didn't learn what that meant. The accident is the one I'm talking. Can you imagine being that guy? You had one job to do. And abstention. In 2000, there was an abstention. I'm assuming, I don't know, it might have, what I'm going to assume is that somebody who thought Gore really did take Florida, that was the whole hanging Chad thing. I was in Florida at that time, and I'll have you know, Florida was very proud that we fucked up that election because, you know, Florida man and all that. All righty. And it looks like only one time in 1796 voting for the other guy. These other faithless electors, when they did actually vote for other candidates, it wasn't the opponent, or at least not the direct opponent. Because you can see here in 72, it says voted for other candidates. I guess they don't consider third parties legitimate opponents. That's kind of shitty, isn't it? But all right. Let's see what else I got here. Oh, yeah. I got some information here on Birch Bay, the guy who kept trying to get rid of the Electoral College. Apparently, he's been doing this a long time. So I'd never heard of him before. So I thought this was very interesting. Oh, and I think I read somewhere, I don't have here, that 72 is the time Biden first got elected to an office. Isn't that crazy? And now he's our senile president. Okay. Yeah, so this guy was not a fan of the Electoral College. And let's see here. I think there was a few interesting things here. Yeah, it talks about the Vietnam-driven movement to lower the... Oh, I've got terrible language, TJ. Yeah, let me see here. Oh, so he was the one who got the lowering the voting age. So I think it says he got 2 constitutional amendments. That is interesting. So the 18th Amendment, but he didn't get the Electoral College one, but I'm pretty sure I read that he got another one. I'm looking for it here. No, I guess it was just that one. For some reason, why did I think it was 2? Huh. Okay. Well, so there's a bit of history with this gentleman. I had never heard of him before. I'd be very interested if any of you guys did. So let's see what else I got here. Oh, more about the electors. So, interestingly enough, and Ken asked if this is Evan Bay's father. I would think so. I mean, that name's not that common. Everyone concentrates on faithless electors for the president, but actually they are kind of like the LP. They vote separately for the president and vice president. They don't vote for the ticket. So I'm going to read what it says here. There have been 75 incidents of electors casting faithful votes for president, but casting some sort of deviant vote for vice president. No such incident has ever changed the outcome for vice president. So I thought that was really interesting too. I did not know that. And in researching these faithless electors, there's a lot of news sources and YouTube channels that are claiming that the Supreme Court recently said there couldn't be faithless electors. They made it illegal. How could they get that so wrong? Oh, it's Bai. I always mispronounce names. But how could people get it so wrong? The Supreme Court did not ban faithless electors. All the Supreme Court did is said that the states could bind them. They didn't say that they had to be. It didn't say that there could never be no such thing as a faithless electors if the state didn't do it. It just recognized that the states had the authority to do that. Now, I disagree with that, but they didn't make it illegal, which is what so many people were saying, which is just crazy. You know? And at the time of that decision, there was 30-something states that already did that. It wasn't like this big thing that that people had thought it was. And the state, and another piece of trivia, this came about from 2016, a Colorado faithless elector that wanted to cast a deviant vote. And that's how it got taken up to the Supreme Court, because he was challenging Colorado, saying you couldn't do that. All right. I think that's it on the faithless electors, and now we have just some articles regarding John Hosper's in... Oh, no, what's this? Let me see here. This is... I don't know what this is. I know it's from, like, ballot... or our candidate. Oh, Willis Stone. He's the guy who did the Liberty Amendment. I just figured you guys might be interested in some information from him. He also wrote that book that kept getting mentioned in LP News called Where the Money Went. So, yeah, the Liberty Amendment Committee, this was his thing. David Nolan also served on the Liberty Amendment Committee. So that's the connection there. But he spoke at multiple LP conventions, and I hope to find a tape of, or something of him speaking. Okay, so now I think we are on to the articles. And I'm not sure... yeah, it was like very bad print. So I am going to pull it up on my little screen down here and perhaps read this to you guys, because this is from newspapers.com, as you can see. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to give you some highlights. This is the syndicated AP column that was mentioned in LP News from James Kilpatrick. So it says, Roger McBride won himself a footnote in history the other day. His name will stand forever down in the fine type with Samuel Miles, William Plummer, Preston Parks, W.F. Turner, Henry P. Irwin, and Lloyd W. Bailey. And these are, he says, the maverick presidential electors. As we saw on that chart, there was a bunch more than just those guys. So... it says, in their own eyes, they put principle above party. I agree. In another view, they dishonored a public trust. And I wanted to continue. Why did he just mention those individuals? That is so strange to me. And there was a comment in here that I wanted to bring up. This wasn't really that favorable towards Roger McBride. You could tell by the slant of this article that this columnist did not agree with what McBride did, but he also hated the Electoral College. So, yeah, it's in this paragraph here. It says, Thomas Hart Benton, the great Missourian, warned of these evils a century ago. An elector, he said, may give or sell his vote to the adverse candidate in violation of all the pledges that have been taken of him. The crime is easily committed, for he votes by ballot. Detection difficult, because he does not sign it. Prevention is impossible, for he cannot be coerced. The injury irreparable, for the vote cannot be vacated. Legal punishment is unknown and would be inadequate. They must sign the ballots now and not have signed them back then, because we know who the faithless electors are. So the columnist continues, it is immaterial that McBride's wild card vote a few days ago had no effect on Nixon's landslide. In so vital an area as a presidential election, our law ought to be made secure. The archaic machinery of the Electoral College should be junked, and these mischievous footnotes be banished hereafter. No, but you can tell this columnist. So he goes on to say, 3 amendments are needed. The electors as such should be abolished. The contingent arrangement also should be scrapped, by which the choice of a president can be thrown into the House, with each state casting a single vote. We should revise the present scheme of winner take all. Now, some of that last thing I agree with. The third point is the main one. The direct national election of a president by popular vote is a bad idea. Okay, for some reason I thought he supported that. So I guess I do agree somewhat. Let's see what he proposed. It would violate our whole federal scheme. Agreed. A wise alternative to direct election can be found in a plan that would award a state's electoral vote according to the vote for each candidate. Thus, in Virginia, which went 70-30 for Nixon, the 12 electoral votes might have been divided 8.4 for Nixon and 3.6 for McGovern. Thanks to the rebel McBride, Virginia's vote officially cast was as Nixon 11, Hospers 1. It was mockery of our democratic process, but thanks to the rebel McBride, interest may yet be revived in changing our basic law. I wonder what you guys think of that. I don't have that much of a problem with proportioning out the electoral votes. And yeah, I mean, I understand the general discontent that wants the national popular vote. And as someone whose voice is never heard really with the third party candidate. I see this apportionment as somewhat attractive. And not that I want to help the Democrats or Republicans in any shape or form, but I can imagine the frustration of being a Republican in California. You might as well not vote because it gets wiped out with this winner take all. So I'm going to go to comments here because I would really be interested. Let's see here. Well, TJ says some of it makes sense, but most is poop. That's a technical term if you didn't know. It's a technical political term, poop. Just messing with you, TJ. I don't know. I prefer it, I think, his scheme to what we have today, though I do not like his shitting all over McBride. I would still want faithless electors in such a scheme. But let's continue here. Oh, there would be no electors. I get it. But you know what? Interesting. Then there would be a fraction of the Electoral College votes that would always go to third-party candidates. I don't know. I'm liking it more and more the more I think about it. Okay, let's see what other articles I may have here. But that was the main one that Nolan referenced, and he thought it was kind of positive. Maybe he thought being called a rebel by the establishment wasn't so bad. Let me see. Here's another one. Yeah, here's Nicholas Hoffman. His articles were republished in a lot of places as well. I want to see. I want to get that up on my little screen here so I can read it. I don't think that there was much here that was, you know, meaty. So I'm just scanning it again here. It gives the history of McBride and talks about the Electoral College. Did you know, and I need to find this, when McBride was 23 years old, he published a book on the Electoral College. I wonder what he said about faithless electors in that book. Let's see. And he says the function which presidential electors were intended to perform was eliminated. The Electoral College died before it was mature. I want to find that book. I did not know he wrote a book on the Electoral College. And he said, McBride isn't a lunatic fringish kind of man, unless that word also encompasses flying your own single-engine plane around the United States. This is no overly demonstrative Abby Hoffman of the far right. He was really somewhat heavy-hearted and reluctant to do what he did. This is much more flattering to McBride. Okay, let me see here. I want to see anything else here. Not that McBride is one of those impossibly rigid libertarians. Too bad. I would have liked it if he was. Let's see here. Want to continue. McBride wrote another book, this one arguing for the Bricker Amendment. I don't even know what that is. This was a proposed constitutional amendment that would have subjugated to the advice and consent of the Senate the presidential's powers to make executive agreements with foreign powers. It caused a lot of political trouble in the early 1950s. The liberals hated it, as did the Eastern sophisticated Republicans. They all called it isolationist, loony bin loony bin right-wingism, and the kind of thinking that martyred Woodrow Wilson and destroyed the League of Nations. It got shot down and we marched into Vietnam, and now it's Fulbright and the sophisticates who would have liked to have got it back. Interesting. I want to try to find those two books by McBride. I think those would be very interesting to read. Okay, let's see what we have in here. Hey, Julian. I want to put up Ken's comment. Ken says, I personally favor proportional for the electors for the number of U.S. House reps and winner take all for the 2 electors for the 2 U.S. senators. Interesting. Yes. Creates incentive to try to win every state, but makes it far more proportional. Never considered fractions. That's an interesting twist. I think so as well. it certainly would be a boon to third parties. It's very depressing not to ever see our name, on election night at all on the map. And I can understand why everyone was hooping and hollering in 72 at that surprise gift from McBride. Okay, let me see if I have any other articles. I think I do, but I want to double check here. Let's close that one down and see. Yeah, I've got it. I've got 3 things here. I'm not sure what they are. Let's pull them up. Oh, no, I already had that one. Why did I pull that up? I must have thought that was a different article. That's the one we just looked at. Perhaps I included it just to show you guys that this also was syndicated and was printed in a bunch of different places. And one more I have here in my little folder. Nope, this is the Kirkpatrick one. I included 2 copies of each, I guess just to show they were syndicated. All right, yeah, so those were the 2 main articles. There were, of course, miscellaneous smaller ones throughout the country. So my newspapers.com subscription has become very, very useful in doing research for this show. So that is pretty much all I have for you guys this evening. This is the end of the bonus episodes for January, February 72. This month, I hope to do March, April 73. And that will put us caught up so that we're exactly 50 years ahead. And then the next full LP time capsule will be in May. So, I was doing a bunch of these in order to catch up. Oh, Ken found one of the books. Can you email that to me, please? Can you shoot that to me by email? And Julian asked, but what was McBride gay? I don't know. I have never heard that. I don't know. Sorry, I can't answer that. No idea. Yeah, Ken, that's exciting. I want to read that, and I'll need to find the one on the Bricker Amendment as well. So, anyone who wants to stick around, I am going to be doing back-to-back another show, and I am going to end this one, and then I'm going to start a new live stream because I had so many things that I needed to deal with. So this is just springing on people. But what I'm going to be going over is some YouTube bullshit. And there'll probably be 10 minutes before I start up the stream because I need to queue up some things. But YouTube took down a video from the cult of RONR. What could be so frickin' controversial that YouTube would take down and denied my appeal for a video on parliamentary procedure? If you want to know, and if you want to see the forbidden episode, I'm going to be playing it here and doing some commentary. And we'll see. But yeah, I'm going to do that probably about 10 minutes after this. As usual, I do my spiel. What keeps me going doing this, and I'm hoping to be able to do it more, is my patron supporters, because it shows support that people do appreciate this. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. I passed a milestone of I do now have $100 a month in supporters, and that was my first milestone. Again, my goal is to be able to make it so that I can do less other work and do this more. I would be doing multiple daily things if I could do this more, and doing a whole lot more for just liberty education in general. So if you can, if you can't, don't worry about it. I know things are tough. Patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. You can join Tom Woods, who became one of my sponsors. I am so proud of that, and Stefan Kinsella, amongst many, many other people, because a lot of supporters are at the $1 a month level. So many hands make light work. But that will be it for this bonus. I'll see you guys in about 10 minutes. If you want to, I know it's late. Believe me, I have job work to do after this. I probably will not sleep tonight. Of course, that's most nights for me. Or sleeping only a couple hours. But all right, you guys, have an awesome night.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business.